greed that's kind of in these multi-billion-dollar companies kind of makes it so that they have to continue to generate these ridiculous profits in order to appease all these investors, but also like their sense of like self-worth almost.
Start recording. I'm going to go over to Twitch and we can do a sound check real quick. Okay, there we go. Says we're live. Are
Nice.
we making any sound though? All right, can you go ahead and just say something for like 5 seconds?
Yeah, no problem. I'm really excited for this. I've been watching a couple of the other videos. Get ready for it.
All right, cool. We sound good.
All righty.
Okay, so all right. Tom says the sound sounds good. Cool. Well, then I am going to get us started. Just give me a couple seconds of silence. Oh, wait. I think we're on. Are we on episode 83? Is that what we're on? I should know this, but let me just double check. I think we are. Yep. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to episode 83 of the Sandbox.Space weekly podcast. I'm your host, Chris, joined as always by Baby Girl and Pumpkin, who are over there taking naps. And of course, every week we bring a special guest. This week's guest is John Daly from VIV Games. How are you doing, John?
Pretty good. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Okay, awesome. Well, appreciate you being here. I know that you came to GDEX. We'll talk a little bit about that. I didn't have much time to chat with you at GDEX. I'm usually running around like a crazy person. But for the audience, for the chat, you just want to give a little bit description about yourself and the company/game.
Yeah. So I'm one of the co-designers at VIV Games. We're just a two-person job operation. We are working currently on a choose your own adventure text-based novel type game, sort of like interactive fiction. A little bit lower on the graphics end because we wanted just more about the actual fiction itself. We're also working on a couple other projects right now. We're working on a light gun game that we're real excited to show off sometime next year.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
What brought that about?
We saw a video for this light gun called the Reaper by Retro Shooter. They are releasing a standalone console of sorts that you can plug into like a MAME cabinet and stuff like that. And they have like a dev kit for it that you can get a hold of. And I just was like, well, that looks cool. And Jack was brought it up to me, Viv, and he was like, what if we do something with this? Because we had ideas for different a game in the future, a few other ones, and we're like, well, this would be so wildly different from what we're working on right now that no one will see it coming. And so we've been messing around with it. He's set up like a target shooting practice level thing to like get an idea of how the gun works, because it's real neat because it has like recoil and like ammo counter lights on it. When you fire it will
that's sweet.
pop back in your hand.
Yeah.
And it works for PC also. Like you can plug it straight into a PC, so the game won't just be on that console. It will ideally be on PC as well.
Okay, that's sweet. I was just maybe 2 weeks ago talking. I teach the Intro to Game Design course at Columbus State, and I was talking to my students, and we talked a little bit about peripherals. I was like, yeah, no one does anything with light guns anymore. When I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, light guns were, they weren't huge, but there was a fair amount of like light gun games. And of course, in the arcades and stuff, you'd have those gun shooters, but you don't see much of that anymore. So that's pretty cool. I'm curious to see, maybe you can bring a demo of it to GDEX next year.
Hopefully, yeah, I would say we'll have something for sure.
Sweet.
We're still trying to finish this one that we're working on. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's been that what's been so we only started working in programming like as a thing that we wanted to pursue for the past 3.5 years, I want to say. Before
Okay.
we had made some phone games using Unity and stuff like that back in 2012, 2013, but we never really went anywhere with it.
Yeah.
And so then we started working with C++ plus plus a few years back, and we got reasonably good with it. We've been using Raylib and stuff like that, but now we're wanting to branch out more. I'm relearning the Unity engine right now, so is Viv. We we kind of pushed it off because of some bad experiences we had back then, but a lot's changed in the last 12 years
Mm-hmm.
with the engine,
Oh,
and
oh, for sure. Yeah, we used to work on was it Unity 2.0 and then the 3.0,
mm,
and that was just a whole different. Like it's so much better now than it
yeah,
used to be. Um, well, that's it. Yeah,
still
that's
no
exciting,
auto.
man. What's that?
Yeah, there's still no autosave. In the
Mm.
scene doesn't autosave, and so like I lost like a week and a half of work on it just
Oof.
recently. And I was like,
Oof.
wait, it doesn't save when I hit play, so
Yeah.
I've learned that the hard way.
Yeah, man. I tell this story all the time. There was a guy, a kid that was in our community group COG, and he was working on the duck game, and he was working on it for years and years and years. Like, I mean, he was like a young kid, and when he was in thing, and then he used that game as I think as like a part of his application for college. But there was
Yeah,
one day he came in and he was like, his hard drive had crashed and he hadn't been saving his stuff up on like a repository or backing it up. And he lost like, it was like 2.5 years worth of work on this game. And we're like, are you going to redo that? And he's like, nah, I think I'm just gonna let it go. That being said, though, I believe in college he might have actually dusted off the idea and done some kind of rebuild on it. I haven't seen it yet, but I tell students, particularly nowadays, it's 2025. Like, save your stuff in the cloud, people. Like, you should be having at least one, if not two, redundancies, because the last thing you want to do is lose that much work. And also, I
yeah.
had that happen with my master's thesis for public health. It
Oh
was like
yeah.
Thursday. It was Thursday night. I like hit save. I felt good about it. My defense, where you have to go to the committee defense, was the next day, and I was like, all right, seems good. I think we're good to go. I woke up the next morning and the file had gotten corrupted or something, and I'd lost like out of it was like 140, 150 pages, and I only had like 80 left or that were usable. And I was like, oh my god, my defense is in like 3 hours, and I wrote to my team, my defense committee, and I was like, hey, I know this sounds really lame and I hate to do this, but I just lost like a ton of my documents. Is it okay if we postpone it? And they were cool. They let me postpone it to like Wednesday of the following week, but that meant I spent the entire weekend and the next week redoing all of that work, and it was a bear, man. So save your stuff, back up your stuff, people.
Oh
We
yeah.
got we got Google
GitHub's your
Drive. It's free.
friend.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So before we get started real fast, I just want to throw right here, we've got your violenceandvideogames.itch.io page. So we'll put this
Yeah.
link in the description. And then also, you did a nice kind of recap of GDEX. So this video, which is on YouTube, we will also post this in the video for anybody that or in the description for anybody that wants to see it. But just wanted to sort of point that out and say thanks for covering the show and coming to the show. And I guess putting you on the spot, what was your sort of overall, because this is the first time you've come, right? So what was your overall
Yeah.
impression?
It was fantastic. It was one of those. It's one of those experiences. It's hard to explain to someone who's never been to anything like it, because I've been to other conventions, but never as an exhibitor. So
Mm-hmm.
this was a whole new world for me. And I was like, oh man, I was stressed out getting ready for this thing. I was like, where? How am I going to set? How are we going to set this table up? We've learned a lot in retrospect, and we cover it in the video of better ways of doing table setting up and like different
Awesome.
things to get. But yeah, so we spent some time thinking, okay, well, we need to get this, we need to get cards. We copied a few tricks from a few other people that we watched on YouTube and things like that.
Nice.
And so when we went there, and we were just really ecstatically amazed. We were just so amazed at how nice everyone we met was there. Like, talked to Tom, we talked to other people there, and just so helpful. Everyone was the most helpful like crew I've ever worked with. Uh, I don't like to, but I've been to other, like I said, other conventions. A lot of times the crew and people working it are kind of rude at other places.
Yeah,
And so I was very happy to talk to people who were just like going way out of their way to help us find stuff.
that's awesome.
And yeah, but it was a blast. The whole thing was amazing. It was fun to meet other people in the field, like people who were also working on games. Like sometimes it gets a little bit hard to explain game development to someone who just plays games.
Hmm.
And so when you're talking about like, oh, I worked real hard on this stupid string library thing for so long, and you try to explain that to someone, they're like, well, what does that even mean? Why is that hard? Or
Yeah.
what is that? And you try to explain what it does, and it sounds like it does absolutely nothing. But
Hmm.
but then you talk to people who actually work on games and programming in general, and they're like, oh yeah, yeah, that is always annoying.
Yeah.
And so that
That
was awesome.
that is something that I try to tell my students, and I say this all the time. I was like, look, I understand I'm biased because I'm the one that throws GDEX, right? It's my show. Like the team at Multivarious, the team in the COG community, we've helped create this show, and it's our baby. But the reality is, there's just a lot of value in being around people that kind of get what you do, are excited to talk about what you're doing, and most of us in our day to day activities don't engage in conversations like that. So whether it's just about knowing video games and understanding like video game, lore and jokes and having in jokes, or it's, some of the more technical stuff where you can actually talk to somebody. That's one of the things I like about our educational sessions is that I try to pull in people that are like really knowledgeable about a subject so that a normal person that just buys a ticket can go and talk to like Jason Conaway, for example, who's come and been a speaker at GDEX for many, many years. He has been in the AAA space as an engineer for decades. He has worked on some of the top tier games, and he's a super nice guy. And so like he knows what he's talking about. And so just being able to interact with other folks, and then I think the great thing about our community too is like, you said we're a lot of nice people. Like people want to share, they want to connect, they want to talk about this stuff, and so I encourage folks, if you are interested at all in the video game industry, even if you're a student, even if you're not sure, just come to a GDEX weekend, and you never know who you'll connect with and what you'll be able to learn. And the other thing you said that I love hearing is that you learned a lot from all the other booths, all the other people that were there, because that's exactly why. Because you were in the ice section, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, like that's
yeah,
exactly why the ice section exists. It's so that people who have never showcased before, maybe they're students, maybe they're hobbyists, they're nervous about showing their game at like a big expo. It gives them a place that they can go, and then they can look around and they can learn from the other booths. And then you'll start to improve for next year. And then the next year you'll improve. And then eventually you'll become a model for others that are coming into the ice section. And then we've had it where, I've seen somebody come in the ice booth, they're there for a year, then they get their own booth the next year, and their booth improves. And then the next year their booth improves. And then we see them at like PAX or something. And they've learned along the way. And that's also something that we keep wanting to do, and we just never kind of get around to it because we just get so busy. By the time GDEX rolls around, we're all just running around like crazy. But we want to, and I think we'll have this be a part of our Sandbox digital ecosystem that I told you about, where you can connect to our promotions guy, and he can help you get everything that you need: banners, flyers, posters, tablecloth stuff, like any of those kind of things you would need for a really good booth. And then that way we could kind of help you, because when you're first starting, like you don't even know, you're like, what do I even need, right? Like you can take some guesses, watch some YouTube videos, but just having someone you can talk to that was with like, oh, we could get you a nice like 8x8 banner, or we can get you
Yeah,
some flyers for a reasonable price. And we actually did that with a couple booths this year, where we did a couple banner printings and some flyer printings, and then we just dropped it off at their booth space. So when they got there, it was all there ready for them.
that's awesome. Yeah, that's definitely a valuable service, especially if you don't have like a local printer that you know well or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that that
Yeah.
can handle jobs for you.
Yeah. And our printer, I feel so bad. Everyone that works with me, uh, they're saints, because it's every year it's just like, okay, we're gonna get ahead of the game. We're gonna get all our printing done ahead of time, and we never do. So all the printers I work with, they know I'm gonna be coming in hot on some jobs on stuff. I was like, oh, can you get this printed in 2 days? And they're like, we'll do what we can. I'm like, all right, thank you. But they're used to working with us, and they're good people. And so yeah. Well, I want to talk more about your studio and your game, but I also want
Sure.
to grab a couple of things from, because we talk about the industry here, because there's a couple interesting comments, or a couple interesting articles rather. And so I'm just kind of curious. I always ask our guests what their thoughts are on it. So the first one I want to pull up here, uh, and I thought this is really interesting. This is from gamesindustry.biz. All the ones I have today are from there, but this is Vicky Blake. New report claims Xbox has increased cost of its development kits to $2,000, which is a 33% price hike, stating we remain committed to providing high quality tools and support for your development efforts. Um, I don't know. Do you use? Have you ever used a dev kit like a Xbox or PlayStation
Uh,
dev kit before?
I I haven't done anything like that yet. I did. I think I was at one point planning on turning the. Remember the Xbox One was supposed to be able to turn
Hmm.
into a dev kit at one point.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think I ever got around to doing that myself, but I did talk to some people who had. I So when it comes down to this price increase, I kind of have like a cool creamy ranch take on this because I actually saw this and people were like,
Okay.
I don't really have a hot take on it per se, but I was thinking I don't think that's that big of a price increase. I mean, yeah, for like uh, a small group like me and my brother, 2,000 is a bit, but I'm also thinking if my goal was to get a game on that ecosystem, I don't think a $500 price increase from the previous amount would be enough to throw me off. So
Hmm.
I saw that and I saw some people complaining like, "Oh, they're making it so expensive." I'm just like, "This is a dev kit for like a business expense." I'm just thinking, I own a restaurant and a an oven is $20,000.
Yeah.
So
I didn't know you own a restaurant. That's cool. What kind of restaurant?
yeah, it's a pizzeria.
Oh, sweet. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's so this expensive $2,000 for a dev kit. Yeah, it's expensive, but you know, if you look at it, it's an item that you have to purchase to be in business. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree. I think for $500, if you're just looking at it as a number, is not that big of an expense, right? And there's certain things. One of the things that we do in GDEX and with the COG community is we also try to get people used to understanding what a professional environment is like, and understanding there can be some expenses that you have to do to just, there's barriers to entry, we'll say.
yeah,
But for Xbox, what I found interesting about this is coming hot on the heels of them increasing the prices of the consoles themselves by $50 to
yeah,
$150. And so as a consumer that's going from, oh, this thing was $500 and now it's $650. Like, are we reading the tea leaves, or are we going off base here where it's just like Xbox has been firing a lot of people and increasing the costs of their hardware, which
yeah,
is, again, probably due to tariffs in a way, but still, it's one of those things where you're like, okay, why is Xbox, PlayStation increased their prices due to the tariffs by $50. You're like, okay, well, I mean that sucks. Like I don't want to pay more than I have to, but Xbox went for $150. I was like, and Xbox is not winning the console war, so you would think that they would try to be as price competitive as possible. But maybe I don't know. Am I off on that? Are my tea leaves off?
No, I do believe that I'm almost certain that Xbox, the physical machine that they're making, it going forward isn't going to be made by them. I think they're going to do something like a licensing deal where something
Mm-hmm.
like how Philips, I think it was, that made the CDI, they licensed it out to a bunch of
Yeah.
different people to make. I feel like that model I think can work, and I can see that happening. Especially my girlfriend got one of those ROG Xbox Ally things. I can't remember. I think it's ROG Ally Xbox, or I don't know what it's called. It's a
Okay.
handheld thing,
Okay.
and
Okay.
uh, and anyway, it connects to Xbox Game Pass and stuff like that, and it's fantastic. She was playing it last night. And I was like watching her play. And I was playing my Switch and stuff while we're watching some junk on TV. I can't remember what it was. And I was just thinking, oh man, I wish I had one of them. And so I can see that being something going forward.
Yeah.
Other manufacturers using the Xbox name, and they're just going to back away from making the hardware themselves
That
because
is
it's
that's what a lot of people are
you know
saying.
yeah.
Is that
The price is of like Game Pass, it went up, but
yep.
it's if you're a person who plays a lot of different games, it's kind of like the dev kit. I'm just thinking if you play a lot, if you're a casual player especially, like some people will play just anything that's on Game Pass. Then you're
Yep.
that's still a pretty good value. If you're exclusively playing stuff like Call of Duty and one or two games a year, then yeah, Game Pass is not worth it.
Yep. Yeah, it's yeah, didn't even mention the Xbox Games Pass price increase. And the other thing they did is that only the top tier you get the day one releases now for Xbox. So now
Yeah.
it's up to $30 if you want the day one releases. So it just seems over in Xbox world, they're all it's price increases everywhere, right? Price
Yeah.
increases for everybody. Look under your chair and you get a price increase. Um,
Yeah.
and it's I don't know if that's a reflection of the way that just the economy and everything is going in general, but it is. I do find it interesting that you would think that Xbox would be trying to be more competitive price wise. But maybe I don't know. Maybe their investors are yelling at them for something, even though they've had a profitable quarter. They're also heavily invested in AI, so maybe they think the AI play will benefit them in the long run. And these temporary price increases, you know, um, I don't know. I just found that kind of interesting. We're seeing a lot of Xbox price increasing lately.
Y-
Um,
Definitely. That is something that it is strange that all fronts price increasing. Like yeah, like you said, like the consoles themselves they went up. And actually, the consoles have gone up to the point that I'm just like I'm never gonna buy one. We used to own one. Jack Viv did, and so he was playing it, and we did that early on. They did that model where if you paid for Game Pass for like 3 years or whatever, you got the console for free,
mhm.
basically. So that's how we got it. The day after that contract ended, the Xbox stopped working, like just died,
Oh wow.
and so we were like, what happened? And we found out it's no longer under warranty by that point, and we looked into the exact issue because other people were encountering it around that time also, and it's this really tiny like microprocessor on the board that you have to have some serious kit to change. Like we bought some of it thinking, well, maybe we could do it. We bought like a forced air heat gun thing to
Mhm.
remove the chip, and we also bought like a big microscope camera thing. But unless you know, because it's one of like 30 on this board, unless you know
Sure.
the exact one that's burnt out, you
Yeah.
won't be able to. And so you have to have like a FLIR camera, and that's like $500 more. I'm just like, you know what? Let's just never play the Xbox again.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not really like a mess around with my hardware guy. We tried to do on the PlayStation 2. Yeah, the PS2, I think you could like solder in a chip that would allow you to play like burnt games. And we
Yeah.
tried doing that once. We soldered it, we plugged it in, we turned it on, and it just caught on fire real fast. And then it sparked and blew up. And we are like, okay, well, that's the end of my PS2, I guess. Um, yeah, yeah, it's, you know, I'm pretty frugal in my spending, but I am kind
Yeah.
of like a tech nerd, and obviously I'm in the video game industry. So I have a PS5 Pro, which was $700 plus tax, um, and I have a nice TV and a pretty nice computer. But that's about all I kind of spend money on, and so that's where I am. But I also I love my PS5 Pro, but it also did feel like I felt like I was kind of getting ripped off a little bit. Like you couldn't. It was $700. It didn't have a. It was supposed to be the Pro version, right? Didn't have a disk
Right.
drive. You had to buy a disk drive separately. It was like impossible to get a disk drive because all the scalpers were grabbing them up. And I was just kind of like, why not just make it $750 and include a disk drive? You know, it's supposed to be the professional model. It's supposed to have all the bells and whistles. So I just felt like Sony was like kind of really skimping on what was supposed to be the high end model. And that's the part that bothered me the most. But as a console, as a device, I think the PS5 Pro is it's pretty excellent overall. But all right, well, I got another one here. There's two interesting articles that. So this is the next one. This is from Sophie McAvoy. Nearly half of U.S. adolescents avoid games that portray women in stereotypical and harmful ways. New study finds that 47.8% of respondents struggle to find characters that represent them. Over 40% of adolescent gamers in the U.S. avoid media depicting women in a stereotypical or harmful way. The Teens and Screens report of 2025, conducted for the Center of Scholars and Storytellers at UCLA, surveyed 1,500 adolescents ages 10 to 24 about their experience with gaming. The report found 42.1% of women and girls steer clear of games that portray women in derogatory ways, as does 36.8% of boys and men. So I found that to be kind of an interesting. How do I turn this off? Little interesting article. Obviously, it's younger folks, but again, as I don't know what the qualifications are for what they considered. Let's see, across identities, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it doesn't really say diversity is an important social factor. It doesn't really say what that determination is. But as someone that grew up in the 80s and 90s, when you look at a lot of the games and a lot of the marketing, there was not a big effort to portray particularly women in the most highest of lights. And so just seeing how young people are reacting. And this also sounds very reminiscent where a lot of Gen Z and younger don't like sex in movies. It's something. So you don't see a lot of like sex or like erotic content in movies anymore. Whereas again in the 80s and 90s, it was kind of edgy and pushing the boundaries. We're starting to see some of that content a little bit in video games, like The Witcher 3 has some sex scenes, and there's a few others.
Yeah.
But by and large, it seems like the entertainment industry as a whole has moved away from that, at least here in the United States. I thought that was an interesting just kind of thing. I don't know if you have any thoughts or insights on that.
Yeah, that one's it's a a bit of a tricky topic to be commenting on,
Sure.
without sounding insensitive or anything like that. I so it is interesting that that people are choosing to avoid this stuff more. I I don't personally like TV shows and movies to have a whole bunch of sex scenes in it, and I don't go for it in video games myself, but only because it's like I'm here to enjoy a fantasy adventure, and so I actually also do avoid games like that too. I didn't play Witcher 3, but not just for that reason. I'm actually not a Western RPG player, so it
Yeah.
just wasn't my cup of tea from the
Should
beginning.
give it a shot. It's pretty
But
awesome.
a lot of people say that, but there were a lot of people who were were surprised by the amount of sex in it. I was like, well, I knew that there would be because there wasn't a lot in the first two also, and there's a lot in Mass
Hmm.
Effect and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there, you know, I find it interesting that people are actively avoiding it now. I just avoid it by accidental because most of the time I play games that are like platformers that don't have it in it.
Yeah.
That would be a weird platformer.
Not a lot of banging in
Yeah,
your
yeah,
Mario games.
yeah. So, I actually was talking to a kid that works for me at the restaurant I mentioned, and he was talking about how he hates it when there's suddenly a sex scene in a game or a movie, and I was surprised because he's like an adolescent boy, and most people say that that's all adolescent boys look for, but
Hmm.
it really isn't. And also growing up as as an adolescent boy myself once, it actually wasn't all I was always interested in either. I was
Sure.
always interested in more technical stuff. I really liked and still do like books, movies, and video games that involve economics and stuff like that. So I think it's just there's always been a broad spectrum of people, and but now they are able to communicate easier through social media and stuff like that, and so they're not totally overlooked by like the mass of
Yeah.
people. And and now that more and more people are coming out and saying it, they're reaching out to each other, and it's becoming a larger movement.
Yeah. I think that's a an insightful take on it. Yeah, I do. Um, I don't want to say worry. I don't know if that's the right word, but there is a lot of research going on right now that's showing that younger people are engaging in less sexual activities, sort of less relationship activities. I don't know if these two things are combined in that way. Like I don't know if just the
Right.
idea of sort of sexuality makes folks uncomfortable. But I do think it. I do think that it is sort of a shame in some respects because of this sounds maybe silly, but an important part of the human experience is that companionship and physical touch and sex. And so if there's sort of a continual move, whether it's a social move or a cultural move or whatever, that if you as a kid are your interactions, your stimulus with sexually related materials makes you uncomfortable, then I think you could be inclined to say that as an adult, you would be less likely to pursue those activities.
Yeah.
And in some cases, I think that there is a loss there where there is a comfort in a relationship or companionship in that way that I know a lot of young people are. There's a guy, I'm totally blanking on his name, but he's just like, he's like, young people aren't drinking and taking risks like they used to. And in some ways that's good because you're just like, oh, you don't want people taking risks. But also when you're young, that's kind of the time you should be taking risks and doing some dumb stuff a little bit. You should be willing to kind of, that's how you build stories and experiences and how you build camaraderie with friends where you're just like, oh man, we got wasted, when we went and did a whatever. I'm not saying you have to get drunk. That's not the point, but
Right.
um, I do think that there is a experience, sort of a bucket of experiences that you can have as a younger person that they do help build relationships and companionships with people, and they tell stories that
Yeah.
if you're not doing those things, if you're just kind of doing the same thing all the time, you are missing out on. Um, so I don't know the answer to it. I just found it a kind of interesting thing because I've been definitely seeing. I try to study up on a lot of the entertainment industry because it's what I do, and I just remember the comments about the sort of sex in movies, and now we're starting to see that reflected in video games.
Yeah, I actually have another point on that. Actually, so you actually brought it up slightly that people being uncomfortable by portrayal of sex and things. A big problem I think we're having today is the prolifer. I don't want to sound like I'm getting on a soapbox here, but
Please,
the amount of
soapbox it up.
pornography that is out there
Yeah.
and the ease of use, access of younger people
Hmm.
seeing pornography out there. and then being put off and disgusted by what they're seeing. And it happened in Japan. Happened in Japan years ago. They talked about how the women and younger men were disgusted by the pornography industry,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why they have a declining birth rate now. People are not having sex or not having kids in Japan because they were grossed out by it because
Sure.
of the industry, and the internet has made it so prevalent and easy to find for anyone,
Yep.
and so I think 100% that that's a big downfall for society, and in general, because it promotes no healthy relationship whatsoever. In my opinion, I get lit up by some people about saying stuff like that, but that's
You can
just
say whatever you want here. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's important to like you mentioned, I'll forget your exact words, but like you're interested in like fantasy, whatever, and you were using that in a
yeah,
particular context. But like porn back in the day, well, first of all, it was much harder to get a hold of, right? And then
yeah,
secondly, it was it was designed to kind of be this edgy thing where you're being a little risque and like you would dabble in it a little bit, or maybe you could use it with your partner as a way of spicing things up in the bedroom or whatever. But yeah, the accessibility of it right now, really, I think it just changes the whole kind of tenor of understanding what sexuality is. And I can see that reflected. And also, you mentioned like Japan. Yeah, Japan's um, sort of traditionally repressive nature when it comes to sex. And then they sort of had this sex explosion with all these sort of like contents. And that's why you see, even in the video game world over there, I mean, there's all sorts of sex based
yeah,
games in Japan. Um, so yeah, that definitely has an impact on it. And then also, I just think the economy in general, people just tend to not, when you're in survival mode,
yeah.
you're not out looking for dates, right? You're just trying to make it through the
Oh,
day. But yeah, it's an interesting. I sort of I fall a little bit on the more open side, I guess, when it comes to video games. Like I view video games as an art form, and if you want to
yeah,
include sex and sexuality in that game in a way that you think will do it, I think there's definitely been games that I've played in the past where the relationships that you've built with characters, it seems to flow naturally. But then there's
yeah,
also games where it's just like, oh, I guess we're jamming on a table. Okay, did not see that
yeah,
coming, you know. And so it really kind of depends on the story you're telling, and then obviously
yeah,
the more violence and sex in a product, you need to skew it to a more mature audience so that they can understand
yeah.
what's going on in there.
And it can be used as a tool for explaining the situation well, and just like communicating different feelings and things.
Yep.
It's definitely not a thing that should be blanketly banned or anything like that. I think it's interesting that people are choosing one or the other now, and there seems to be skewing more towards not having it. And
Hmm.
that's one thing I really enjoy about art in general, because you get to find out what the society is like through the art they consume.
Yep. I mean, for me in games and movies, I want an experience that feels interesting and
Mhm.
unique, and like that the creators are trying to say something. They're trying to create a really interesting experience or tell a story or whatever. And if that needs to involve, violence or swearing or sex in some way, like I'm all for it.
Yeah,
But if it seems like it's just being kind of shoved in for one reason or another, then I'm just like, maybe it doesn't work. All right, last little thing I want to pull up, and then I want to talk more about you for a second, if I can
sounds good.
open the correct tab here. So this, I say this every episode. I try not to talk about this too much, but it just keeps coming up. But there was a really interesting article here. This is again GameIndustry.biz by Stephanie McAvoy. Over 26% of European game professionals were laid off in the past year. More than 10% are still searching for jobs. Over a quarter of game developers in Europe experienced layoffs in 24 and 25, with 10.4% of those still searching for new roles. The latest edition of the report found that game designers, artists, and QA specialists were the most affected by the layoffs. Those in the creative professions also felt the least secure in their roles, whereas those in analytics, HR, and top management reported the highest sense of job security. The survey found that those who changed jobs voluntarily dropped from 23.2% to 17.5%, while involuntary employment rose with 10.4% reporting they were laid off and currently unemployed. That was compared to 6.2% in 2024. So, yet more layoffs happening in the games industry. You're working on sort of an indie studio. Have you ever had a desire or thought about working at a larger, like a medium or AAA studio, or is kind of doing your own thing been what excites you?
So I've always been kind of a do it my own way kind of thing, and but that's why it comes from working for myself already, and also I work well with people that I'm related to. I don't work well with people that I don't know. And so, like, all my brothers, we own the restaurant, and I work well with them
Okay.
because we understand that even if we yell at each other, it's not like
Yeah.
a thing. But if you yell at someone you don't know, suddenly you got to go in front of HR and you
Oh.
know,
Well, maybe you shouldn't be
uh,
yelling at people, but I get what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah. It's we're not like violent people, but
Sure.
sometimes you get heated when things are going sideways.
Yeah. Well, I
Uh,
think in the business world, uh, and maybe this sounds a little strange, but like, I've got a small business. I think the goal with our small business and everyone that's involved is like speaking sort of directly and clearly and not
yeah,
like beating around the bush. And so sometimes we might swear or sometimes we might like poke fun at each other about something.
yeah.
Um, but that's different than having like some boss who's just a total jackass, right? And is
Oh yeah, yeah,
constantly belittling you. Like those are different. If you can create a culture where people can kind of feel free to be a little edgy, kind of say things that are maybe on their mind, but
yeah,
they know everyone is working together to solve a problem, that's a different environment.
yeah, definitely. So I do have on this whole layoff situation though. I find it interesting for a couple of reasons because there's so many factors at play. But
Hmm.
one of the biggest factors was the kind of glut that happened during COVID. Video game industry blew up during COVID. People were buying it like crazy because they had nothing they could do, and they had at least here in the United States they were giving extra money to a lot of people. You know that were and so because of that you suddenly had extra cash in the system. You're hiring people to make more content for everyone to purchase. And so these industries kind of got too big for what was actually sustainable. A lot of industries did it as well, but video games is probably the most visible one.
Hmm.
And so everyone's trimming back to pre-COVID levels, and it's unfortunate. It's terrible that all these people jumped in thinking, well, I've got a job for life now. But that's an issue that with game. I won't say that games aren't profitable. All these people are still making fantastic profits, and they can still afford to have most of these people working there. But it's not so much about profits from these giant companies anymore. It's their investment people who want
Yeah.
to see absurd returns, and because of that, they gotta cut people. Because if they don't cut people, they're gonna be out of a job.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think, to my knowledge, and someone in the chat can correct me wrong, there was a little, a bump, like a pretty sizable bump in 2020 and 2021 in games industry revenue, associated with a lot of what you said, right? Like, most people couldn't go out and do anything. Yeah, there was like people were losing jobs and income was dropping in some regards, but also just your ability to spend was like you couldn't go out and do anything. You couldn't go to restaurants,
Yep.
couldn't travel, and so it made sense. Like you buy your Netflix and your Hulu, and then all right, well, I'll start buying some games, and so we saw a pretty big jump. But one of the things that I do like to mention is even though we saw that big increase and then like a slight decrease, I think in like 22, 23, it still never decreased to pre-20 pre-COVID levels, right?
Right.
So the amount of money that was being generated, it was like, yeah, there was all this bloat, maybe if you want to call it bloat, from hiring people, but they were also making a lot of profit. Then the profit started dipping down, and they're just like, oh, we're just going to start cutting a bunch of people. But like, they were still making record
Yeah.
profits. You know that like
Yeah.
I use Xbox as an example where they cut out almost 10,000 people in June of this year. And then it was
Yeah.
like 3 weeks later, the CEO standing up on stage at an investor meeting talking about how they just had one of their most profitable quarters. And you're just like, guys, like it just doesn't it just doesn't feel good, when you've got all these folks that are doing it. And then I'm a teacher. A lot of the couple of the people in the chat are teachers, and it's just like I have to be honest with my students. I was like, this is a rough time to get into games development. Like I don't
Oh yeah.
know. I don't know if in the next 2-3 years it's going to get better, but just trying to find a job in that space is pretty challenging. Um, and I hate to say that, particularly for my students, because they're paying to be there, and I'm trying to teach them and prepare them. But that is a reality that it's pretty tight, tight goings
Definitely.
out
Definitely.
there. People always need pizzas, though. Hopefully, so
Yeah. So usually, yeah.
yeah,
We were talking about like this the other day, though. I mean, me and my brother were um, the greed that's kind of in these multi-billion-dollar companies kind of makes it so that they have to continue to generate these ridiculous profits in order to appease all these investors, but also like their sense of like self-worth almost. Like
yeah.
it's like
There's a lot of ego in it for sure.
yeah. So like, oh man, if you don't get to boast to all your country club buddies that you made $40 billion or something like that, then what are you gonna do? It's human nature to be greedy and generally speaking, kind of not good towards people. If once your priorities get skewed that way, and the industry unfortunately got skewed that way. It happened also with crypto, and
Sure.
with AI coming out now. It's more so like they're saying, oh, we can replace all our junior devs with AI. And then it's like, well, if you're going to replace all your junior devs, where are your senior devs going to come from in 5 years?
Yeah, that is a great point. I was talking to somebody about that the other day. It's just like if the pathway for new people to get into these industries, I mean, we're talking about video game and tech, but it applies to a lot of other industries, is
Yeah,
slowly diminishing. There was this great conversation that Ashley Birch, the voice actor, she does like a lot of stuff like Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn, and she's done voice work on all sorts of stuff. But she was mentioning, she's like, AI is sort of replacing a lot of the like the barks and the grunts and just NPCs that are like going oh like
yeah,
AI just kind of replaces those because you don't need to pay a voice actor to kind of do those. But what that also does is that's where new voice actors learn. That's how they get
exactly.
the experience. That's how they get time in the booth. That's how they get to learn how to work with a director, a voice director. And if you're removing all of those low to medium positions, then there's no pathway for actors in this case to improve their skills and gain experiences and do things like network, right? You go in, you're part of a project with a couple other people, you're doing voice acting, and then all of a sudden oh, I just did something with Troy Baker, or I just did something with Nolan North or whatever. Now you know them, and that can open up the door for other opportunities.
Yeah. It's real bad because I I am of a mind that I haven't actually seen anything good come from AI, period. So, like, so I'm just thinking, if you rely on this thing the wrong way, it can be used as a tool, as an augment for someone learning stuff at times. But
Yeah.
even then, I just feel like if you use this wrong, you're going to set yourself up for a huge failure in a few years, and a lot of these companies are. It's going to be a wild, I think, next half decade. I think next 5 years, we're going to see some big names. I think totally drop out. I think in the next 5 years, like big companies that are going to sort of collapse under this tech debt that they're setting themselves up with
Yep.
of unsustainable code bases written entirely by AI that no one really knows what's doing.
Yeah. I think again, I think that's a very insightful thing that people aren't thinking about. It's like, okay, you can have AI do all this code, right? But like there's no institutional knowledge. Like nobody
Yeah.
knows, nobody is there. Like my wife's brother works at Chemical Abstracts and he's been there for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Like 30 plus years. And so he's one of the people that like he knows how the system works inside and out, all the how the technical system works. So if there's ever a question, they can come to him and he can help guide them. And part of his job is onboarding, new junior devs so that they, because he's not going to be there forever, right?
Right.
But without folks like him, nobody was going to understand how this stuff is put together. And that's very problematic. I think what you said is insightful. Yeah, a lot of these companies might find themselves, they save some money in the short run, but now they have an unsustainable tech infrastructure that nobody in their company understands.
Yeah. Definitely. And I was reading an article about how it's gotten to the point that senior devs are even kind of being tricked by this. They'll trust AI written code over junior devs not AI junior devs code about 75% of the time more. And
Wow.
so like even people who are should be knowledgeable and should be like, like I don't know if this is right, but because a machine wrote it, I'm going to trust it more. And that's not
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. And I mean, Caleb just mentioned like dead internet theory and stuff. Like I see this a lot.
Hell yeah.
I see this a lot on my campaign. Like I try to post on social. I'm not a big social media user, like personally, but I
Yeah, me
post for
either.
the campaign. And there was the No Kings protest on Saturday, so I
Mhm.
posted a few things on TikTok. I just started a TikTok account.
Yeah.
I don't use it for anything other than to just kind of post stuff about the campaign. And I take a video, write a couple things, do a couple hashtags or whatever, and I post it. And I just noticed I was getting bombarded by mostly like kind of MAGA-y, anti-me things. But I'm just like, I took the time to kind of respond to all of them because I was like, oh, I'm happy to have a conversation with you, or what do you want to know, or whatever. Very few responses. And I was like, I bet you half of these responses are just bots. They're not even real people, right? They've just been programmed to say, they see a hashtag, they follow the hashtag to the video, and then they respond out of their pre-selected Excel sheet of responses or whatever, right? Like these probably aren't even real people. And then you've got bots that are probably responding to other bots. And it's just like, what are we doing here? Like, are we back to this in a weird way? This is kind of back to the sex and companionship thing, which is like, are we building real relationships with people?
Right.
And that's why I'm so, we keep doing these things like GDEX. We keep doing these things like COG, because I think it's important to be in a space with a person, talking to them, hearing what they say. Like you and I just met, I mean, more or less today. And I think we've had a really great conversation and had a chance to kind of explore some things that you're not going to get that by typing angrily back and forth over Twitter.
No, it actually, like you said, people in politics, are people building connections anymore? No, because politics has become almost pornographic in nature. And so
Yeah.
it's very much the same thing. You can't. Pornography is not just sex stuff. It's everything that gets sensationalized and gets ridiculized. There's a word for it beyond
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
fact that
Yeah. I feel
stuff
you.
is just pornographic.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of funny. I catch a lot of people because there'll be sometimes I'll just be out talking and someone will come up to me because I'm running as a Democrat, I say, but I'm not. I don't consider being a Democrat as part of my identity. It's
Right.
like I'm running for a job, and of that job, this is the position I'm running for, if that makes sense. And so
Yeah.
sometimes people come up to me and they'll be like, oh, I'm a hardcore Republican or whatever. I was like, okay, cool. Well, what's on your mind? Or like, like they're expecting pushback, and I think their internal body is expecting to go into defense mode because
Mhm.
politics is very vitriolic right now.
Yeah.
And then when I don't do that, when I'm just like, oh, hey man, how's it going? What do you want to chat about? They're almost caught off guard because they're just like, I mean, I
Yeah.
guess we can talk about something. I was like, cool, whatever you want to talk about, we'll talk about it. You
Yeah,
know?
because people are used to fighting bots now. Like they're
Yeah.
used to fighting like a creature that isn't real online.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing online is real. I mean, it's just like, and that used to be the thing we all said when we were younger. We said it in the '90s. We said it in early 2000s. Like, nothing, you don't believe anything online because it's not real.
Yeah.
But suddenly we stopped forgetting that. We started believing that everything was real,
Mm-hmm.
when it's all just a bunch of things that people put out there to farm your rage, so that they can get clicks and make more money.
Yep. Or they're, yeah, again, they're bots, or they're just trolls. I saw a couple young kids, probably 12, 13, 14, kind of trolling at the No Kings protest, and everyone around them was just like, you're being a little dick, but whatever, just, we'll take care of you. We'll make sure that you're okay. But on the internet, like, you never know who's trolling or who's not, who's coming with good intentions, good faith and good
Yeah.
intentions, I think. Sweet. Well, before, we're getting close on time, so before we wrap up, I just want to talk a little bit about your project. You've been working on this game for a while. I'd just be curious. Now that you've done GDEX, it's
Yep.
another year until we get back to a GDEX.
Yeah.
What kind of things would you like to implement? What are there some features you were just like, oh, we really want to have this ready by next year?
So, yes, a lot of what we're working on now is the continuation of the stories in other stories. So, a brief explanation of what you do is when you go into the game, you select a book from the library and you start filling out with your choices the story on that page. So, like, let's say you pick the wizard or whatever, and then
Mm-hmm.
you're suddenly the apprentice of this great magician,
I always
and
pick the
you're
wizard.
supposed to, that was the number one most picked thing at GDEX was
Is
wizard.
it? Okay.
Yeah, we kept a log of everything everyone was picking. So
Nice.
anyway, so one of the options you could do is where you're supposed to clean up the spell books, or you're supposed to clean up or you're supposed to do a potion. And so, like, you might be supposed to make a potion, so you're supposed to do what type of potion you're making. Anyway, whatever happens in that story at the end would carry over into other stories. So, like, if you end up making a potion that made this one soldier super powered so he can go fight some great dark lord, that would happen, and it might be referenced in another book. Like, this wizard one day created this guy this potion that gave him the strength to do this.
Okay.
And so, getting all that finalized, that's our next big thing. We got some of it in place, and it's kind of hard to explain without a visual representation. But basically, yeah, what you're going to be doing is creating a full history of this world. History of Dragosa is the name of the game, and by the end of it, your choices will have influenced every stage of history.
Okay. That sounds really cool.
Yeah,
I mean, it sounds pretty
yeah,
ambitious.
oh yeah, oh yeah. We're aware of that for sure. But we also, certain things are hard, but they're not impossible. And we've
Sure.
we've learned a few tricks for carrying over things, and so
Hey, man, I
we also
think,
made we
I
made our
think,
own tools for it.
okay, I think having a little ambition is good. You gotta make sure you keep your scope in check. But
Yeah,
I would much rather see somebody. So what I said about like movies and video games and stuff, I'd most rather see somebody, a creative, kind of take a shot at something and maybe not quite stick the landing than just do something standard and boring, right? Like, um, and I think there is a lot of people right now that are looking for like interesting narratives. We had a guest on. I don't know if you know George Zeitz. He's a writer. He's come to GDEX, but we've had conversations where it's just like we've seen this giant explosion in computer power over the past
yeah,
30 years, but none of it's being devoted to like things like branching storylines or simulations. It's all like graphics and ray tracing and path tracing and the visual stuff that kind of sells. But I was like the promise of video games when they were first starting is like, look at these worlds we can build and all these character interactions we can have. So that sounds really interesting, having a story that is built on and feeds into
yeah.
itself in a unique way.
That's part of the reason why we were like, okay, let's throw the graphics out. We won't do anything basically. We just have the book and it's open and stuff like that. And we're like, we'll focus all of our attention on trying to get this one thing.
Hmm.
And so that's kind
Do you think
of,
you've hit it?
I think we've gotten part way there.
Okay.
I think another several months to a year, I bet we could probably do it. Yeah. I don't like giving timelines, period.
Sure,
But
sure.
because the
I'm not gonna
last
hold.
game
I'm
we
not
worked
gonna
on,
hold you to anything.
yeah, the last game we worked on, we were like, okay, we'll get this done in a year. Ended up being like 2.5. You
Hmm.
know,
We
but
have
you know,
a
we were also
we have a saying at Multivarious. I kind of say it all the time, which is, you can estimate as well as you can, but at the end of the day, everything ends up costing twice as much and taking 3 times as long.
yep.
It's just one of those things where you just the estimating just never works properly. Um,
Oh yeah,
well,
no.
well, that sounds really exciting. Is there a way for folks who are interested to follow you and keep on top of what you're doing?
Yes. So our Discord, we post a lot of game dev updates on our inner devlog. And I can get you that link
Okay,
for
I
that.
can post it in the
But,
description.
okay, cool. So we post almost weekly now. First, I was doing it daily as I was fixing bugs that we discovered at GDEX. Which is no better way to find a bunch of bugs than have like 150, 200 people try your
Dude,
game for the first time.
it's yeah, I think that's another thing that people underestimate is just sending your game through live fire and seeing what comes out
Yeah,
at the end.
yeah, we found bugs that we didn't know were possible. Like we flat out don't have a certain texture in our game, but somehow it got displayed on screen. It's just this rabbit. So now we're trying to figure out where that rabbit came from.
Okay. Nice. Yeah,
I think
our
it's built into the Raylib engine or something. I don't know.
okay. The first game we ever released, Hatchet, it's a sort of a puzzle game. And so we had timing and scoring and everything, and you could get, stars based on how well you did. But we watched somebody, they did a video playthrough of it, and they managed to beat a level in like 8 seconds or something, which is like more than half or less than half, I guess, of the time that, our internal testing showed it could be done. And we were just like, how did you even do that? And we had to go through and look at it, and we had to like refix the score because they just found some clever way to get through this area.
Awesome.
So all right, man. Well, John, it's been a pleasure. I think it's about time we wrap up here, but thank you so much for being on the show. I've enjoyed the conversation tremendously. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of
Yeah.
GDEX. If there's anything I can do for you, let me know. But this has been episode 83 of the Sandbox.Space weekly podcast. Of course, we do our live stream every week at 10 a.m. Eastern on the Twitches, and then we'll post it to YouTube afterwards. Reminder to keep an eye on the GDEX, so at the GDEX social medias. We're going to be putting some information up on that. We're trying to get our dates and stuff sorted for next year. And then also keep an eye out for the Sandbox.Space professional incubator. We are working on that as well. And what is this, the 22nd? We should have some information next week, I hope, if everything goes well. But yeah, thank you also for watching. So on behalf of myself, Baby, Pumpkin, everybody in the chat, and our special guest, John, it has been a pleasure, and we will see you next week.